Well, hello everyone. Good evening to you. Hopefully, cooled off after the last couple of hours at least. I know we're coming to you a little bit later than usual, but better late than never for this week's edition of the knee jerk reactions after Mizzou goes to Vanderbilt, top 15 matchup, and falls 17-10 in what was, let's say, an eventful game for a lot of reasons that Mizzou fans obviously don't like, and we'll get into it with our takeaways here. But I mean, the all things considered, through a game like this, that Mizzou is scraping and clawing to just stay in it. Obviously, Vanderbilt was having their struggles too. Not nearly as high scoring as we maybe expected coming into that contest, which is a little surprising. But to me, looking back, it doesn't make a whole lot of nonsense when it comes to how this game script might have gone. Both teams know how important this game is. Both defenses have probably heard about the opposing offense for all week long, and they get extra motivation to play better. And that's what showed on the scoreboard. And Mizzou suffers an injury that it's the one injury that you just don't want to have ever. And Mizzou already lost a quarterback to injury this year. Now at least we'll see what the actual timetable is. I know it's a little more indefinite, but Bo Prabula coming off, carted off in the air cast, and we don't know what the status will be for sure going forward. But we can look at what that showed, and it does not look good, obviously. So through all of that, Mizzou had a chance, like down the stretch, to at least get a game-tying touchdown, and then that's about as crushing as you can have it result in, to say that you actually completed the Hail Mary pass, but that it ended up an inch short than you needed it to be. And so Mizzou gets their second loss on the season. The margin for error is completely gone now if you're still holding out hope for the college football playoff, but we'll get to what we think about that going forward here on the Knee Jerk Reactions. If you want to leave a comment, be sure to do so on our YouTube channel. Give us a subscribe as well. We're also live on Facebook. If you're listening back on the podcast, appreciate that, as we once again go through the takeaways that I had for a game like this, where Mizzou stays in a defensive battle, second straight defensive battle that they've been in, but this time the 2 to 3 plays that went your way last week against Auburn, well, now they went Vanderbilt's way. And so that's the margin in this conference. It is that short. And so one week you're going to have them. The next week you probably won't, and you just have to find ways to consistently pick yourself back up from those types of games so that you can have a successful season. So, look, lots to get to with this. Let's start with the big one, though. I mean, Bo Prabula getting hurt is obviously an issue, folks. I don't mind him running. Let's first get that out of the way. Everyone had the fear of, Bo Prabula's a running quarterback. He's more susceptible to injuries. There's only a true freshman backing him up because we lost Sam Horn to injury for something kind of similar. Let's not run him as much. No, this is the way that he plays. You cannot have a fully operational Bo Prabula if you're just saying that he cannot cross the line of scrimmage. He's got to throw the football. Tell him to slide, obviously. Tell him to do those sorts of things. But in this situation, 4th and goal, like, there's no sliding. Like, you make the play or you don't. You put your body on the line. You try to pick your team up with a touchdown that could give your team the lead and have a huge momentum swing after you got that interception, starting with the ball at the Vandy 20-yard line and trying to finish off that drive. Like, there's no playing it safe. I'm fine with you going for it in that situation. We'll talk about whether the sequencing was good there, but just the play happened, folks. The play that everyone was dreading ended up happening, and it happened game 7 of the season. And so Now, where does Mizzou go from here? Obviously, we'll wait to hear the status on or the official status. I know stuff has been uh, reported out there. I know Matt Zenit said close to the end of the season, if not, maybe a little longer. I don't know. Drinkwitz obviously said that it was there were no broken bones or anything like that, but couldn't give an official timeline after the game. So we wait and see. But I think we all saw what type of injury it was. We saw how the training staff reacted to it. They put him on a cart. They put him in an air cast. He was in crutches and in a boot on the sideline towards the end of the game and after the game. We can kind of read between the lines as to what that might be. And so expect that probably he's out for an extended period of time. And now you have to try and figure out a solution. Matt Zowers came in, and I got to say, folks, in that situation, I was impressed with how he was able to operate things. They made it a little more simple, some of the throws that he had, but not every throw was straightforward. He had to make some plays in this. Particularly remember a throw on the first full drive that they gave him where he had to kind of fit it over a linebacker to convert a third down. Like, it was not an easy throw to make, and he was able to make it. I was pretty impressed by the true freshman to get that done and find a way to move the sticks for his team. What I also liked was that Mizzou didn't necessarily, yes, they had to run the football a little bit more, but they didn't have to change much of their approach offensively with Matt Zowers coming in. He still made a solid amount of throws. He wasn't perfect. He missed some throws very clearly, but there were still some good moments that you saw from Matt Zowers thrust into a situation where you're on the road against a top 10 team in the SEC. It's a big game. Both teams have one loss. You're trying to get a college football playoff path, essentially. And I thought in that situation, he held his own. Now, it'll be tougher going forward. You talk about the fact that if he was working off of adrenaline for that type of situation, now if he is trusted to be the starter going forward, or has to be in that situation now, you wonder how the week of preparation will look. He gets 2 weeks now with the bye week, and if he is in fact the guy against Texas A&M, we'll see how that looks for him going forward. But now you have to kind of hit reset on that a little bit. But man, you obviously prefer Beau Pribula to be out there because he gives you the most upside. He certainly gives you the threat on the ground to kind of make sure that you're keeping defenses honest when it comes to his dual threat ability. And look, with 4 games left, 3 of them against ranked, 2 of them, I guess, against ranked teams, Mississippi State and Arkansas. Mississippi State should have gotten that done today, shouldn't they? I mean, come on, you had Texas on the ropes, man. You can give them that 3rd loss, man. Anyway, A&M and Oklahoma are not going to be easy on this kid if he's the guy that's in there, Matt Zowers. Like, you obviously, the Beau Pribula getting hurt is a huge, huge blow. If in fact the case is that he is out for the rest of the season, like that really puts a damper on things. And look, we'll obviously get to see what Matt Zowers has if in fact Beau Pribula has to miss the rest of that time. But I mean, not only with the 2nd loss, and we'll talk about what that does to the playoff hopes, but projecting out, what does Mizzou do now with their 3rd string quarterback in there? And how will they respond from that? How will the rest of the team be able to respond to that? I hope that they saw something from Matt Zowers and they can unlock more of his potential with the time that he'll get on the field, potentially, if in fact Beau Pribula has that long-term injury. But man, it's a tough thing to have that happen at the time that it did, where you get stuffed on 4th and goal. You have a chance to turn the game squarely in your favor, and you not only get stuffed, but you also lose your quarterback in the process. I mean, that's just a gut punch of all gut punches. Mizzou still took it and had a chance to win. That was what was most impressive. But now a whole lot of questions as to where Mizzou goes from here after Bo Prabula gets hurt. And we'll wait for a more definitive look at what his injury and situation is. But that's a crushing blow to a season that had a whole lot of optimism. And now you'll have to operate with the true freshman that you were hoping to just have redshirt and maybe get a little bit of experience here and there. But looks like potentially now he's the guy for the final third of your season. Now, look, that even through all of that, they had a chance to win, and they had several chances that they let go by the wayside. And look, the reason why Mizzou isn't a winner today is because of what they did in the red zone, or mainly, more correctly, what they did not do in the red zone. They had 3 drives in the second half where they got into the red zone. I believe they only came away with 7 points there. Or maybe it's just the total number of drives that they had. Yeah, I mean, it's turnover on downs, obviously, on the first drive of the second half when you get the interception, and you have first down at the Vandy 20-yard line. And you can't use that momentum to go down and score. And look, let's maybe start with that. So they've got 3rd and goal at the 2, right? They're obviously trying to punch it in, get the touchdown, break the tie. And look, I tweeted at the time that, hey, I wouldn't hate a Bo Prabula run at this point. I don't know if it's what they should do, but I'm saying I wouldn't hate the play call. I think now is the time to maybe do that. I think the most likely thing was they handed off to Ahmad Hardy. Second most likely thing, they let Bo Prabula do the fake pitch play that Brady Cook does, and they try to run it in that way. It helped in a short yardage situation earlier in the game. So I thought that those were the 2 most likely scenarios, but rolling out to try to run the flat play to Brett Norfleet, who also unfortunately got injured in this game, and trying to run that to the short side of the field when you've got the defense all bunched up in the end zone and they're ready for that play. And it just did not fool anybody. And clearly Bo Prabula got a guy in his face right as he was rolling out, and he had to force a throwaway. And it was almost a throw that got picked and maybe taken the other way for a touchdown. And so, and then they go for it on 4th down, and then Bo gets stuffed at the 1 and obviously gets hurt. But like, if you're in a situation where you know that if you don't get it on 3rd down, you're going on 4th down, run it on 3rd. Run the quarterback run on the 3rd down play. And look, if you don't get it because you just inched ahead and you got 1 yard, like, okay, just run something similar on 4th and goal from the 1, and then you probably get in. If you get stuffed at the line, or maybe you get tackled for a loss, like, okay, maybe you've lost your momentum there. Now you maybe bring the field goal unit out and you take the lead, but run it on 3rd to set up the possibilities that you could have on 4th down. Or if Vandy makes the play and you get tackled for loss for a couple, maybe 3 yards, then you say, all right, well, let's cut our losses and take the lead. But I just thought the sequencing there was not great from Mizzou's purposes. And look, there were obviously questions about play calling in the last game. Eli Drinkwitz said the play calling, I'm no obvious words, but it was what he was saying was, look, we've got to go back to things that are working. And that was pointed straight at the offensive coaching staff and the play calling and everything like that. But here, I just thought the sequencing was off. Obviously a timeout had to be called. Eli Drinkwitz ran down to get it before the 3rd and goal. And I thought at that point, they maybe talk over all of the scenarios that could happen over the next 2 plays. But no, they try the play action thing with Norfleet again. And on the short side of the field, when you've got the defense bunched up and ready to spring onto Norfleet once he gets the ball on him, if you even get a chance to, and Mizzou clearly didn't, well, then you're back where you started. And I just think a run was going to set up something better for you on 4th down if you didn't get it, or you just get the touchdown on 3rd down by running it in. I didn't understand that part of it, and I know a lot of you were talking about that too. But then, like, the very next drive, you have Matt Zowers put together a 12-play drive. Yeah, there were some instances where Mizzou had some penalties that set them back, and they try a field goal attempt from 29 yards away, and Robert Meyer doinks it. Look, that's just the situation, folks. Like that's what you're up against. That's what Mizzou's got to deal with. And that's why they went for fourth down 5 times in this game. They were 4 of 5. They were pretty good on those plays, except for the one that obviously we've talked about. And then on the next drive, they get the touchdown. But I mean, you even go back earlier in the game where Mizzou had a chance to drive down, get a touchdown. It was the drive where they eventually got the field goal. It was the 38-yarder, 39-yarder, I believe. But they would have first and goal at the 1 on that drive if a tripping penalty on Dominic Giudice doesn't happen there. And look, that was a good call. Giudice did lift his leg. You can't deliberately do that when you're on the ground and you're trying to make sure you don't get beat by a defender. Like, you can't do that. There was another tripping penalty on Tollison later in the game that I thought was BS. Like he was falling down. He was not doing anything deliberate to trip his opponent. I just thought that one was one that needed to be picked up, and it obviously sent Mizzou back on the last drive where they were trying to tie the game with a touchdown. So, look, I thought going into this game, red zone was going to be crucial. And look, one Mizzou unit held up its end of the bargain on that, which we're going to get to in a moment. But Mizzou on the other end needed to cash in on the chances they had. And I was impressed by how the Matt Zowers-led offense was able to still keep that up, but you still have to finish those chances. And they were unable to get that going in this game. That's the difference. Like, Vandy had their red zone chance late, and they converted it. And so you've got to find a way to counter that somehow. The red zone chances for Mizzou just were left by the wayside. Too many opportunities where they get inside the 20 and they come away with nothing. Not even like it just trading touchdowns for field goal, like 0, nothing at all. And so that obviously is going to be looked at this week with maybe a new signal caller in there they weren't expecting to have going forward. Look, the next one obviously is the one that you feel the best about, because I mean, I say you can feel the best about it. I'm not saying you have to feel awesome about anything today. It was disappointing that Mizzou couldn't get to the win because of how excellently they played against Diego Pavia tonight. It was excellent. I have no complaints about how they did it. They were stellar against Diego Pavia. He got held to 129 yards passing, including 15 passing yards in the second half. 10 of 19 throwing the football. He had an interception. He had no touchdown throws. Now, he got in the end zone, obviously, but 8 carries for 20 yards. That's it. That's all Diego Pavia had. You held this Vandy offense to some of its lowest offensive totals on the season. They average over 40 points a game coming in. You held them to 17. Their lowest total yardage on the season, 265. We mentioned 129 passing yards, 136 rushing. They're 3 of 10 on third down. They averaged 55% on the season on third down this year. They ran 45 plays. That's it. They held the ball for 23 minutes. You held the ball for 13 minutes more, give or take, than they did. 12 and a half, I guess, technically. Like, Mizzou's defense, they even got Pavia to the ground a couple times. He had only been sacked 5 times all year, 2 sacks for Mizzou's defense today. Defense was stellar. I've absolutely no notes for how they were able to keep themselves in this game. Yeah, they gave up a big run because a guy got loose on the edge. And look, there's been loud noise about this, but like, yeah, Marvin Burks took a bad angle and probably shouldn't have taken that angle. And that maybe has been a trend recently. And so that noise will only continue until his play improves. But look, other than that, that one big play, they had an excellent catch on the sideline that was originally ruled no catch. But I mean, the guy toe tapped on the sideline as perfectly as you could. That was Trey Richardson, who had that 37-yard catch. Just perfectly done. Perfect throw, perfect catch. Nothing you can do really about that. This defense put together, I think, probably their best game of the season. with how they played. I'm counting the games where they held teams to negative passing yards and under 10 rushing yards on the night. Like, I don't care. This is a unique challenge that Mizzou was up against with this quarterback, with this offense, with how they use the tight ends, with how they spread it around, with how they just get 5, 6, 7 yards each and every play, and they just will the other team to death on those types of drives. They had 9 possessions, not including kneel downs, in this game, and 4 of them were 3 and out. I guess one of those 4 was the interception, but I mean, if it's tipped up in the air and it's ruled incomplete, then that's also a 3 and out. Like, the Mizzou's defense was everywhere. They were a good enough unit to go and get a top 10 road victory tonight. It's just really unfortunate that the offense wasn't. And look, for reasons, a big reason that's out of their control. But I mean, there were other ways that Mizzou could have stayed in this game offensively, even through all of the adversity that hit with the health concerns and things of that nature. And it's just so disappointing that they couldn't come away with a win based on how well the game plan worked against Diego Pavia and the Vandy offense. So, look, you tip your cap to the defense, and you obviously say, hey, keep it up, guys. But gosh, that unit really deserved a win today. All right, this game and clock management. I have some quarrels with how it was handled towards the end of the game with time running out. And look, maybe it doesn't matter. That Mizzou was still going to be up against it. They were still going to be down 7, needing to get a score towards the end. But in this case, every second matters. And let's just take you through the scenario. So Vanderbilt still tied at 10. They've got the ball inside the 10-yard line, and just going through the plays, it's looking like they're going to score. It's looking like they're going to get the go-ahead touchdown or field goal in that situation. So I'm just making sure I look for the point where it happened. Okay, so Mizzou has a chance to stop the clock after Cedric Alexander runs up the middle for a 3-yard gain, and that made it 3rd and 4. I thought at that point, Mizzou could have taken a timeout, and with about 2:35 left to go, and then they essentially are able to say, all right, Vanderbilt, you can get a first down without a touchdown, obviously. Okay, so it was actually, now I have my bearings here. Apologies for all of that. So after the play where Pavia rushes up the middle for 5 yards, he dives towards the end zone. He doesn't quite get there. He's down at the 1, but he gets the first down. And now you're looking at the clock. It's above 2 minutes. It's around the 2:37 mark. And at that point, Eli Drinkwitz, he had 2 timeouts left. He needed to spend one of them. Well, he needed to right there. Because you have to preserve as many seconds as possible, even though you have the 2-minute warning coming up. Because if you choose to spend your timeouts after the 2-minute warning, you're still bleeding out a few more seconds than you need to by running those plays. Yeah, it's going to end up at near the same point on the clock, but not exactly. I mean, you still have to run those plays, and those take about 5-ish seconds every time. And so if you're waiting until the 2-minute warning for the clock to stop after the Vanderbilt gets the first down to essentially make it 1st and goal at the 1, well, then you're bringing down some time that you do not need to bring down. I mean, all of those seconds are precious. And look, with the way that it could have played out here, if we just walk through the scenario, let's say Drinkwitz takes that timeout after Pavia gets the first down, but he's short of the goal line, and there's about 2:30-ish left on the clock. If he calls timeout there, and he's got one left, The next play, Vandy got stuffed right at the line of scrimmage. Josiah Trotter stopped him, and then you call your last timeout, and you probably have about 2:25 to go there. And then on the next play, Pavia runs it in, and they score. And so at that point, you've got probably 2 minutes, 20 seconds, no timeouts, but you still have the 2-minute warning to work with. And that's when they're going to be kicking off, getting you the ball again. So I know folks maybe sometimes say, oh, it doesn't really matter. Like, you're going to have the 2-minute warning anyway. You can just run down to it. No, save all the time you can possibly save. Every second is crucial. You saw it towards the end of the game where Mizzou was trying to stay ahead of the clock and trying to fight through all the penalties that they had with the 10-second runoff and the grounding penalty and the fact that they had to maybe spike it with about 30 seconds left to make sure that Zowers just reset after moving the chains there. Instead, he gets wrapped up and he throws it away and they call it for grounding. And then ultimately you lose half your clock. And then you also have to run a quick play to just get something going or stop the clock somehow, just have an incompletion. And then you're 37 yards away, just about 38, and you have to heave it. I think you could have set yourself a little bit better up if you're working with a larger clock to begin with instead of around 150-ish, which they ended up having. I think you could have given yourself a little bit more time to have your young quarterback operate in a 2-minute drill. And then as that 2-minute drill was happening, there was obviously a penalty after that the Mizzou had to overcome. But I mean, the operation at the end of the game just seemed a little bit off to me. And I don't think it's because of Matt Zowers. I mean, look, you can expect some sort of, not timidness, but a little green nature from him when he's operating a 2-minute drill. He's down 7 and he's trying to bring his team back. But I just thought the management of the timeouts when Mizzou didn't have the ball could have been better and could have set them up a little bit better for when they did have it. And so, look, you wonder with the fact that they're heaving it towards the end zone to try and get a Hail Mary, whether it could have been a little bit better set up if they had a little more time to inch closer to the end zone. And then you're probably taking a deep-ish shot to still get a touchdown. But I just didn't like the process of how they set up the 2-minute drill. And then ultimately when they got into it, I thought Zowers handled it pretty well. But I think when they got the first down into Vandy territory, kind of inside the 40-yard line, I think at that point they needed to spike it with about 30 seconds left, give Zowers a reset, and then just look for 2-3 more plays that you can use to make that happen. Because like Zowers had completed a 18-yard pass to Coleman on 2nd and 13 after a false start. Like, again, Mizzou was not very clean penalty-wise in this game, and certainly not on that last drive. There was a lot that Zowers needed to overcome there. But I think after he completes that pass to Coleman, you get set, you spike it, maybe less than 30 seconds to go. But then you have a little more time at around the 30-yard line. Yeah, that's the thing. Like the penalty set you back. Lost you down. You essentially get sacked on that play, and you have the 10-second runoff. You're at the 30-yard line. Just spike it. The downs at that point, I think, count a little less. You obviously have to pay attention to them, but at that point, it's just keeping positive momentum going before the clock runs all the way out when you don't have timeouts. So I don't know. I mean, that's a little more nitpicky. I get it, but I just did not like the way that the timeouts were handled towards the end of this game. All right, let's talk big picture now. We're heading into the second bye week, 2/3 of the season done. I mean, the playoff hopes might be gone now. You obviously look up and you see what what else happened across the country, the other SEC teams dropping. I think Mizzou got some favorable results, but they still have to take care of their own business. That's the whole name of the game. And they still can. Like, can they go 4-0 over these last 4 games and be 10-2 and be right in the mix for a CFP bid? Yeah, sure. But is that likely? If you're on your third string quarterback, is that going to happen? Is Matt Zollers going to make it happen against Texas A&M, who looks like one of the best teams in the country right now? I mean, to me, it was illustrated pregame, if you were watching the broadcast, with what could happen for both Mizzou and Vandy with a win to their playoff hopes. They would have been both above 50% chance to make the college football playoff with a win in that game. And with a loss, they drop down to 15-ish%. So that's where it's at for Mizzou at the moment. So if you factor in the 15% that Mizzou had at the playoff with a loss in this game, but then you factor in the fact that Bo Buell is probably out for the rest of this season, it's looking bleak. Like, you have to get these next 4 wins. Like, if you are holding out hope for that. And honestly, like, I get it. We're all of you watching here are Mizzou fans. And so you hold out hope for a lot of things, and that's good on you. But I came into this matchup thinking that it was an elimination game for either team that lost it. Like, it felt that way, because the rest of the schedule is still challenging to them. And if they're losing this game, then you kind of project out and you see, well, they're probably not going to get it done in their next 4 with absolutely no margin for error. So from that aspect, that's why, you stop talking about it, at least for now. Look, if you beat A&M, okay, start talking about it again. But who can predict that at this point with what Mizzou now is going to be up against? Now, look, bye weeks are helpful. It's a good time to have it now before a big game like that in Columbia, where you're hosting most likely a top 5 team. We'll see how A&M finishes out tonight. But look, I think for now, after you lose this game, you have to stop talking all that much about whether or not you're going to make the CFP, because after you get that second loss, there is no more losing at that point. You can't take anymore. So you've got to beat A&M. You've got to go on the road and beat Oklahoma. Look, they're beatable. I mean, they showed that today. But will Mizzou be well-equipped enough to run the table in those games? It's a huge if, and if you had to put my feet to the fire and say whether they're going to do it, I'd say no. So that's ultimately what this loss means. It's a tough one in that sense, because no matter who was getting hurt in this game, Mizzou loses it. Yeah, the playoff hopes are really fading in there, and it's hard to see. You can squint and see them, but it's going to take a huge undertaking for Mizzou to climb back into that, even though it's the SEC and anything can happen, and the margins again are so thin. But you've got to, the defense cannot have an off game anymore. Ahmad Hardy can't have an off game anymore. So everyone else has to up their level of play to mask maybe the drop off, if there is any. And look, we'll see. I'm not doubting Matt Zollers, but you see what the writing on the wall is when your starting quarterback goes down and the true freshman has to come in. And keep in mind, Matt Zollers missed all of his high school senior season. This is the most meaningful football that he's played, most meaningful snaps he's ever had of his life. But this is the most snaps he's had, period, since his junior year. And so you factor that part in, and you lose maybe a little bit of the running upside with Bo Prabula, obviously. And I just think you're also losing a really good arm talent in Bo Prabula too, and obviously more seasoned with how he has played this year. But we'll see how Matt Zollers is able to handle it going forward. But when you throw him out there, you have to expect a margin for error, and now Mizzou has none. And so when it comes to the playoff hopes, that might be gone as a result. So we'll see what happens with the rest of this season for Mizzou. If they play above their heads, then hey, maybe they'll put themselves back in that conversation. But right now, I can't really predict that will be the case. John, thanks for the comment here. Missouri will be 8-4 at best with the O-line continuing to play very inconsistent. Zowers looks very good, though. I don't have very many complaints about the O-line. Now, obviously, there were some penalties that set them back. So you got to clean that up. But I don't think we talk about the offensive line having a similar type of game that they had at Auburn last week. I think they took a step forward from that. Ground game got fairly going again, not maybe to the huge degree that we had seen early in the season, but Ahmad Hardy, 20 carries, 97 yards, like you'll take that. They were giving him the ball. They were being stubborn about it, and almost 5 yards a carry from him. Mizzou averaging 4.5 yards per rush when you take the one sack out. I mean, it's not, again, to the level that they were hoping it to be season long, especially how the first 5 games, 6-ish games have gone. So, look, I don't put really most of this on the offensive line. You do say, like, hey, you've got to clean up some of those penalties that set them back in some key situations. I think the main one, the tripping on Judice, that essentially took away the Bo Prabula run, which would have set up 1st and goal from the 1 in the first half. That's the one that really kills you. And so that's the main penalty there. Brian saying Zowers looked good. That second tripping penalty was BS. Like, yeah, I agree with you. I didn't see that. And look, there were other things that were missed in this game. There was a clear offside that was missed. There was this tripping penalty. There was other stuff that, like, look, it's all water under the bridge at this point. You can list the calls not necessarily going Mizzou's way as a reason why they didn't get this done, but not the main reason. They could have overcome them, if you ask me, with how this game played out. So, I mean, bottom line, Mizzou, this loss is certainly crushing to the college football playoff hopes. Doesn't need to be crushing for the season. You can still have a good year. You can still go 8-4. You can still go 9-3, and that's not bad. It's not what you were hoping for, obviously. You were hoping for 10 wins, get you into college football playoff for the first time ever. Everything lining up defensively with how that could set up. Bo Prabula looked good. The running game was the strong suit that everyone was expecting it to be early on in the season. But sometimes games just don't break your way. And again, the margins are so thin. 2 to 3 plays decided this game. 2 to 3 plays decided the last game for Mizzou. Same with the game before that against Alabama. Like that's what it all comes down to. And so you can still have a 9-3 season with a win over either A&M and Oklahoma and be like, okay, yeah, that's something to feel good about down the stretch. Not sure what I would predict as far as where the wins come from here, but we'll see how, if in fact Matt Zowers is going to have to be the guy going forward, what he'll look like in that first game. That's for his first start in college, going up against a potentially top 3 team in Texas A&M as they're coming off a bye too. Daunting task, but I guess we'll see how that goes for the young freshman. Thanks for joining us here on the Knee Jerk Reactions. Again, a little bit later than usual, but if you're listening on the podcast later, obviously you listen whenever you want. But we appreciate you doing that and joining us on Facebook Live. Be sure to like our channel if you don't already. And also, if you're watching on YouTube, go and subscribe if you haven't already there, where you won't miss a single bit of our YouTube content. Knee-jerk reactions after every Mizzou football game. The big show from 4 to 6, also live on this channel every weekday. So do not miss any of that. We'll have obviously more to say on Monday at 4 with myself and Brendan, who was at the game tonight and obviously downtrodden after how this one went down. So we'll be looking forward to Monday's big show to kind of make sense of it all. And we thank you for joining us here on this late Saturday evening. Have a great rest of your weekend, everyone.